Well, the Lightning lose game 2 in overtime in what was a very frustrating and exciting game for both teams. We break it all down. We talk about some of the storylines, and we look towards game 3 back in Tampa Bay. All here on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Tankard. Thank you for joining me on this late episode of Locked On Lightning. Just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we are talking about tonight's loss in overtime, a 3-2 loss in Game 2 to, obviously, the Panthers. That puts the Lightning down 2-0 in the series, going back to Tampa Bay on Thursday. But we talk about some of the storylines from this game. Just another frustrating first period. Really, it was just the Andrei Vasilevskiy show once again. And what does it mean going down 2-0 back to Amalie? We break it all down. But first, I just want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So tonight was just an incredibly frustrating game if you were a Lightning fan. And I saw it all over Twitter before the game, and it was from all the usual media personalities discussing how, and this was the word that kept being thrown around, how animate the Lightning were over the last couple of days of getting more shots early on, getting more pucks on net, and being able to get things started early on. And you got to figure in situations like that, especially in the playoffs, that kind of counts for something, especially with a team that has really a good amount of playoff experience and is no stranger to being down in a playoff series, especially early on. But what did we see in the first period of this game? We saw 3 shots. 30 shots. And I don't understand at this point in time what is the issue. I know we could sit here and I'm going to give the Panthers their credit because it really is due, but Panthers are a very good team. Okay, let's not mince words about it. They are a very good team, but they are not a defensive juggernaut. Okay. On the other side of that, the Lightning are, on paper, too good of a team to be held to 3 shots in the first period. And on a third note, it is absolutely disgraceful in a playoff series. You know, this isn't a regular season game. This is a playoff. We're not talking about regular season. We're talking about playoffs. Okay? The fact that you are a team, like I said, that has a ton of playoff experience, who knows what is expected of them on a nightly basis. And you're already down 1-0 in this series to a team that is clearly very good, who went to the Stanley Cup final last year and lost to the champion. And you're practically a no-show. I think the case could be made that the first period of tonight's game was probably worse than Sunday afternoon's game. And we've talked about this, and because we've seen it so many times this year, and not only this year, but over the last couple of years, as it has gradually gotten worse, that this Lightning team just, for whatever reason, in situations where it is almost really a desperate situation that is required of them to go out and have a good start, it's almost like they make a subconscious effort not to and do the opposite. And we've seen it throughout the course of this year. I mean, this isn't anything that is out of the norm for the Lightning, okay? And we kind of figured coming into the playoffs that they grew out of that. We saw it in March. We saw it in April. That this was, at that time, looking like it was a different team. And they have somehow, in the last couple of weeks, reverted back to their old ways. I tweeted it out during the game. It was at some point during the first period. It was probably one of the worst instances that we have seen this team. I mean, you really have to go back to November to see worse puck possession out of this team. And that's really what it goes down to as well, is just they were just they were giving away everything. It was like, it almost looked like I felt like I was watching the Oprah show. Everybody was getting giveaways except the Lightning. And this is not the time of the year where, and on part B of that statement is they're not good enough to do it. This isn't the time of year where you could just say, all right, we'll turn it on in the second period, and which they have done in the first two games. And like we've said, I mean, overtime in this one, they had just as much time as the Panthers and had a ton of opportunities. And yes, they ran into a good goaltender. But on that same breath, I mean, I look at this game and I can't say for sure if the Lightning got off to a good start, if maybe things would have gone differently. But what I will say is that when we're looking at who is to blame, because the Lightning still finished this game with 23 shots, which is unacceptable, especially with the high volume offensive production that the Panthers put out on the other side. I look at who's to blame, because at this point in time, we have to look at somebody. And the blame goes all around. But as I have always said, when it comes to this team, that at the end of the day, it starts and it stops with John Cooper. And yes, he is a great coach. He has had a ton of success in with this franchise. They were talking about pregame, 11 out of the 12 seasons he's been here, made the playoffs, phenomenal. But making the playoffs isn't enough for me. And I think we could all say that for certain, everybody that are Lightning fans. But to come out in a game like this, and yes, it was very important. And the cliche that I'm going to use is every game is even more important than the last in this series and in a playoff series. To come out with that flat in a playoff series is embarrassing. And I really hope, John Cooper just lays it out on the line. Sometimes, and we've seen this very rarely throughout his tenure, we saw it once this year after a bad loss. Maybe he should do it a little bit more often. But he has really, I want to see the leadership from him. I want to see him call out his team. I want him to be blatantly obvious about what is going wrong here. Because the Lightning have now squandered two very impressive Andrei Vasilevskiy performances in the playoffs when we've been waiting for this for pretty much all season. The guy is playing the best hockey we have seen him play all year, and this is how this team is repaying him. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about this. I mean, I know it's a super frustrating thing to watch. And really, it's a frustrating game to have. But you know what? At least you have 2 more tries at this. At least guaranteed. After that, it's all up to the Lightning. So let me know in the comments. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of negative ones, which is fine. I mean, let's vent it out. Let's talk about it. This is going to be a storyline that is going to be definitely spoken about over the next couple of days. And especially until the Lightning figure it out. So we'll continue to talk about that. And coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk about really the depth. And I'm not just talking about, the bottom 6, but really the entirety of the team for really these last 2 games. It's been shockingly, it's been surprising yet not surprising, just how certain players are getting shut down. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, we'll talk about our first sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at the Game Time app. Now, listen, Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. You could pick out any specific games or matchups that you'd love to attend. You could go ahead and, whether it be Rays, Marlins, or in my case, Yankees, Mets, you're always able to find the best deals. My favorite thing about this app is that they have the all-in prices. They have this toggling feature that shows the total up front, and you don't have to worry about any surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONHL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So once again, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Go ahead, subscribe to the podcast wherever we're available in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. Hit up our social media pages. LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram, where we've been posting some pretty cool content there over the last couple of days. You definitely don't want to miss out on it. So go ahead and check it out there. So yeah, this was just a game that I think really exposed the Lightning more than anything. I think it really, this whole series really has, but tonight I think was really the exclamation point of those issues. Obviously, the I don't want to call it a non-effort because I don't believe guys just went out there and mailed it in. I would say just really not a productive first 20. I think that's a good way of putting it. On the other side of that really frustrated me, which also compounded with just the lackluster play in the neutral zone, has really been just the non-production that we have seen from really this entire team as a whole. The depth has been really not so good. The goals tonight came from Stamkos and Point. That was the story last night as well. The big thing, the big alarm bell that is going on with the Lightning right now, obviously, is Nikita Kucherov. Yes, he gets a point tonight on an assist. It was a third, it wasn't even, it was a secondary assist. So my thing is, I don't care. I really don't. A goal's a goal and that's great. But like I said on yesterday's episode, we're in the playoffs. This is really just, this isn't like games in the middle of February. We'll lose 3 in a row and, then figure it out. No, you can't do that. You lose 2 more. That's it. Your season's over. You don't play again till October. That's it. And there was times throughout the night, and I can't single out any player because it was pretty much everyone for the most part. It was just this team, and I'm not saying it's an effort thing. I'm just pointing out what I saw, and I'm sure I'll get some feedback in the comment section on our YouTube page. But really the thing that kind of alarmed me, other than the fact that we're not seeing Kucherov get going, really no production from Cirelli, Hagel's nowhere to be found, Esamont, yeah, he's putting on, hits and playing physical, which is great. But other than that, I mean, really not much of anything. Duclair was really disappointing the last couple of days. I really thought Duclair was going to be a lot more of a prominent figure in this series. But it's like I said, it's really been the Stamkos and Point show as of now. But the thing that's really kind of frustrated me and has kind of been, and if you're a Lightning fan, you haven't noticed this, look closer, look at some of the highlights. Even on fast breaks and breakaways, the thing that is really kind of, I don't know if it's these guys are just gassed or whatever the case may be, but when the Lightning have space, they're just lagging. And they're supposed to be the faster team. And it feels like to me what the issue might lie with that is that it is very evident that the Florida Panthers are a lot bigger. I mean, that's just what it is. The Panthers are just a bigger, more physical team. And yeah, the Lightning are physical. They're putting up their hits too. I mean, there was over 100 hits total if you combine the two teams tonight. But sometimes in the playoffs, that's not something that you should do. Yeah, you got to pick your spots when you play physical, especially if you're undersized, which the Lightning clearly are in this series right now, and you need to change it up. It seems as though is that, yeah, the Panthers are taking the fight to them as, they should. But the Lightning need to kind of figure out a way to use their speed to their advantage, because I don't think we haven't really seen that yet in this series. We're seeing a lot of really basic sequences from the Lightning. We're not, other than I think it wasn't the Stamkos goal from the other night. I believe it was the Point one. The Point goal where they had the quick play off the face-off in game one, that was really all you've really have seen from the finesse from this Lightning team. And I don't know if it's just a matter of this Lightning team getting beat down. But having said that, we need to see some sort of change in offensive philosophy. Cross ice passes, that's not working out. The Panthers are doing a very good job of just clogging up the passing lanes. The thing that I always talk about that I think that really the Lightning need to do more of is they just really need to shoot from all angles. There was a couple of times tonight where it was Paul and it was Point. We're kind of down low. Paul was more towards the trapezoid, and he had the puck, and he just didn't shoot it for whatever reason. And I get it. Shots are hard to come by, but at the same time, you gotta throw the puck at the net. You gotta. Even if it's not a good angle, you never know. You might get a lucky bounce. And on top of that, you have a hot goaltender. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky was phenomenal tonight. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I mean, yeah, the Lightning weren't helping their own case, but at the same time, I mean, the guy in net for Florida is, I mean, if Florida wins the Stanley Cup, he's gonna win the Conn Smythe 100%. And you really need to get more creative as a team. and especially early on, and all the things that have been transpiring in these last couple of games have really just been a collection of everything that we have spoken about on this show, really. And it's like I stated before, it's really been disappointing because we kind of thought that they got over this, and we'll talk in the next segment about it, how you're going back home. Maybe that'll stir something up, having your own crowd in front of you and figuring it out. But, you got to start early. You need to figure it out in the first period, not in the second when you're down already. And that's been really the issue for the Lightning the last couple of games. And part of that has to do with the fact that their depth players, their bottom six, even some of the players on their top six aren't coming to the table and shouldering the burden. So let me know in the comments below. Very troubling times. I can't think of the last time I was this concerned about the Lightning during the playoffs. Even last year in the Toronto series, you kind of always felt like they were going to figure it out. And like I said earlier in the episode, you're wasting two very good performances out of Andrei Vasilevskiy. I don't know how much better he could be without pitching a shutout, which he's not going to do. This Florida team is too good. The Lightning are terrible in front of Vasilevskiy. The traffic was unbelievable near the crease tonight. The guy did everything that he could possibly do to keep them in this game. So, yeah, we'll see. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about some home cooking. Hopefully the Lightning can get things going at home. What does that mean, going back home 2-0? Maybe we'll throw some predictions. I don't know. I'm still trying to process everything that happened tonight. I'm recording this not too long after the overtime loss to the Panthers in Game 2. So coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk about that. But first, we'll talk about our last two sponsors of today's show, and one of them is our friends over at the FanDuel app. Now it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, bet on everything from slap shots, the home runs, the slam dunks, all on the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And we talk about our other friends, our good friends over at Policy Genius. Now, did you know that Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace? It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. Now, with Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Now, Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies and their team of licensed experts on hand to help you talk you through the process. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the entire process step by step. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurance in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Now, check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. And follow me on Twitter for all Lightning news and snarky comments about the Lightning. I'm at DankyDank, DenkyD8NK. So, like I said, I'm still processing this game. It was really just a frustrating game with positivity sprinkled in. The one positive we could take from this is that the second period, I think, was the best we have seen this team play thus far in the series. Vasilevskiy looked as close as to his Conn Smythe Trophy self that we have seen in quite some time. Now, the negatives I've already stated. If you want to go back and talk, listen to it or watch me talk about it, go ahead. But, now the Lightning, I always talk about this. The Lightning are one of those teams that they just always have an abundance of opportunities. It really is. It's pretty impressive. I've been watching hockey my entire life. I've been watching it very closely. I mean, I can't tell you how many games I watched during my time with NHL.com. I watched probably thousands. And the Tampa Bay Lightning, really in all my time, I've never seen a team more lucky. And what I mean by that is that they have these opportunities that to turn it around. You're down 2-0. Clearly it's not working on the road against the Panthers. And, they made a comment during the second intermission that, the Lightning could turn it around if they were going to win tonight. But you still got to win one on the road in Florida. And yes, that is absolutely true. And that's something we're going to have to figure out in the future. But right now, all you got to worry about is winning games at home. And that's why I say the Lightning are lucky because, you've lost your first 2 games, but you have a very good opportunity to win 2 games on your own turf, which, as we all know, the Lightning are a very good team at home for the most part. They've had their struggles here and there. But like I have said throughout the entirety of this episode, guys need to step up, and I even said it coming into the playoff series and the crossover with Armando of Locked On Panthers. The days of relying solely on Andrei Vasilevskiy are gone. I don't know whether you want to attribute it to just the league getting better, because that is definitely something that is legitimate. Or you could even attribute it to the fact that this team, unfortunately, is not as solid as those teams that we've had in the past that could get away with that. And on the other side of that I'll throw on to is that, yes, nobody, including myself, could have foreseen the abysmal performance out of this team in the first 2 games. Nobody could have seen just Nikita Kucherov and Anthony Duclair and Nick Paul and name any other players you would like, practically not having any effect on this series thus far. Guys who have been very instrumental in the Lightning being successful down the stretch of the NHL regular season. And what I'm hoping is that being back home at Amalie in a familiar space, a space that you could only be as comfortable as you could humanly be at home and nowhere else in the league. And that's, I would expect that the Lightning show up on Thursday. As for the first period, I think that's just a toss-up. I can't sit here and guarantee that the Lightning are going to come out, play a phenomenal first period. But what I can say is that we will see somewhat of a different performance. I would imagine that this team is going to have an optional skate tomorrow, maybe. Well, no, they're going to have a practice tomorrow. Cooper will talk to the media afterwards or before or whichever. And I imagine we're going to have an optional skate on Thursday. And I would imagine the whole team is going to show up. And I think this is the opportunity not only for the Lightning, but for John Cooper to really lay it down for his team. And I wouldn't be shocked nor upset if we see kind of drastically different lines. We saw some of it tonight. Cirelli was playing on the first line with Cooch and Point. I wasn't a big fan of that. I wouldn't expect to see that in the next game, I think we're more likely to see a lot more of Stamkos, Kuch, and Point. I would imagine the second line, if I had to guess, we'll see Duclair, Paul, and Cirelli. With some Hagel, back probably some Point and Hagel switched out from each other. And then the third line's tough because you don't want to leave them shortchanged with Paul playing up. And this isn't going to be a whole game thing. This is going to be, I think, by a situational basis. But I think there needs to be some size and experience added to that mix. I think that Esamon is fine on the wing of that third line. And I wouldn't be mad to see Mott on the third in certain situations. He has a ton of experience. He's played on teams before in the playoffs and won. But I kind of spoke about before, Esamon and some of the other players on this team have really been getting weighed down because of the size of Florida. And that's not something that's sustainable. You're not going to win the physicality game against Florida. That's not something that's going to happen. I wasn't too overly impressed with how Mitchell Chaffee has played, especially tonight. The guy, I like him as a player. I think that he has potential in the right situation to be an effective player. But he just looks at times lost out there. And playing on the third line kind of, to me, is a liability for him right now at this stage. On the other side of that, the defensive side, Hedman and Radish is okay. I like how Dumba has played throughout this series. Chernak got hurt tonight. That's the other thing. I mean, Chernak just gets hurt way too much, where I don't think he could be consistently effective throughout the course of a series. And you're really, especially in this series, you're really starting to see the defensive side of things really miss Sergachev out there. There's certain situations tonight where I kind of thought, especially on sequences that the Lightning had the puck, where or even situations on going down the other side on a breakaway, where I kind of felt like Sergachev would have been able to make plays. Even though it was a phenomenal save, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but that breakaway that Dumba had on Bobrovsky, that Bobrovsky made arguably the best save of the year. Sergachev, who has a little bit more silkiness to his game, I think maybe would have tucked that in. That's just my opinion on it. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, I'm hoping that we could see Sergachev back, if not in Game 3, Game 4. I would imagine if Game 4 is an elimination game, I would expect that Sergachev would be back for that. As for how many minutes he'll play, who knows? DeHaan hasn't really impressed me. Lilleberg, I just don't think he's ready. I just don't think the moment's right for him right now. So let me know in the comments your thoughts, questions, your takeaways from the game, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk more about it, because I am waiting to hear what John Cooper has to say, whether it be tonight or tomorrow, before or after practice. So let me know in the comments below, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk more about tonight's game. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.